This is it, ladies and gentlemen, the 100th anniversary of the private run-for-profit Federal Reserve perching on top our once great republic. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday, 23rd day of December 2013. Bruce Fine, constitutional law scholar, advisor to Congress, and Ron Paul will be joining us to talk about the fact that we have a dictatorship of the bureaucracy in this country, and about his ideas and if he supports or not a constitutional convention to try to reboot the republic. You know, I've been critical of that. I know Fine's been critical of that in the past, but I want to get his take on that now. G. Edward Griffin will be joining us, of course, author of Creature from Jekyll Island, to talk about 100 years under the Federal Reserve and where we go in the future. That's in the guest list today. We are live, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, and like little elves in the InfoWar, and I'm a jolly old elf myself. We are here broadcasting worldwide the message of freedom and individual responsibility. And we are going to open the phones up today as well. This is not just the 100th anniversary of the Federal Reserve, but it is the date which you must sign up or be fined between, what is it, $3,000 to $5,000 individually, even more for a family, if you do not sign up for the Affordable Care Act, that, like the Patriot Act and the New Freedom Initiative and so many other government programs, is the opposite of what its name would imply in an Orwellian fashion. So I'd like to hear from you out there. Are you ready to start getting your fines? And, of course, even if they postpone the mandate for a year, again, to just kind of let this train wreck sit there and claim it's all a crisis, not of their doing, they will use the crisis to gain even more power, and it allows the insurance companies to now get rid of markets and basically charge you whatever they want. And that's why the insurance companies wrote this. And so we're going to be discussing that today as well. I want to get everyone's take on the government being your doctor, along with some HMOs and foreign banks that own these insurance companies, foreign and offshore banks. It is the worst type situation that I personally could imagine. The president, here's the headline on Infowars.com. On day president signs up for Obamacare, record numbers reject health care law. Crass PR stunt simply not working on Americans. Yes, some numbers show 90% against the health care law, but if they spin the questions, you know, you can get only 65, 70, 80% that are against it. But even people like Robert Gibbs are on the news saying, you know, repeal it, get rid of it, postpone it, fire whoever did it, fire whoever built the website. They're all making it about the website because this is the greatest transfer of wealth to private interests through government the world's ever seen. The Supreme Court ruled it is a tax, as we told you. But it's not even a tax to the government. Sure, they increased some payroll taxes and some fines and some fees and some property taxes federally. So there is some federal transfer, but the big enchilada in the midst of all this is the fact that it makes you go out and buy it from these big insurance companies. Gee, if you've got to buy something and they can sell it for whatever price they want, what's going to happen? It's going to make the price go up. And they got their nose under the tent flap the last 5 decades with car insurance and house insurance and renter's insurance. And then they just jack it up and 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 come in and regulate and shut down their competition. We've got big NSA news, big First Amendment, Duck Dynasty news, and so much more. And I'll give the phone number out when we come back on the other side of this break for your take on Obamacare. It's only going to get worse. And as a giant hoax, it was passed through. And 100% of the money of your income tax goes to pay debt to the Federal Reserve for the privilege of the nation having its own currency. Lincoln issued our own currency even before the Federal Reserve, interest-free, and was assassinated over that. Kennedy moved in that direction and was assassinated, amongst other reasons for that, with his executive order to begin abolishing the Federal Reserve and to issue $40+ billion just to begin with in Lincoln greenbacks that had been out of circulation, but that he could reissue without even passing a new law. And so here we are, the 100th anniversary. G. Edward Griffin, one of the foremost experts on the private run-for-profit Federal Reserve, will be joining us in the third hour. And we also have Bruce Fein, constitutional lawyer, top advisor to Ron Paul, and also to many members of Congress, joining us to talk about, we contacted him, wanted to talk about a constitutional convention that some people have been saying is the answer. I have serious reservations, but we'll get his learned view and opinion on that. But then he wanted, strangely enough, and I say that sarcastically, to talk about how we have a unified, single, tyrannical government now, a one-party system, and how we have a dictatorship of the bureaucracy, concurring with my analysis. But there's really no analysis there. This is just plain as the nose on our face. So we're going to be discussing that with Mr. Fein as well here today. I want to wish everyone a wonderful Christmas. I want to wish everyone out there a better year in 2014. This is going to be the make it or break it year coming up. And we've seen a lot of trials and tribulations and craziness, not just here in the United States, but worldwide the last year, a huge awakening because of an avalanche of oppression, an avalanche of bureaucracy, an avalanche of classical autocratic oppression. And the real battle is about to begin in 2014 out into 2015. But 2014, not just here, but in Europe, not just in Europe, but in Asia, the Middle East, Africa, Latin America, there are revolutions and resistance movements against collectivism happening everywhere. And the globalists are trying to cinch up the planet right now. They are trying to consolidate their power grab. Because if they don't consolidate their power grab, they could lose it all. They've gone so far, they're not going to turn back now. But the issue is we can't turn back either. Now, there's a lot of examples. They're reinstating the head of Duck Dynasty, Phil Robertson, and it's now come out the family's lashed out. They weren't part of staging this. The Daily Mail got a big exclusive in-depth interview. There's several others now where they were told, do this as part of your promotion, and then he said it off the record, off the cuff, and then the family even learned about it and said, hey, stop telling us not to talk about Christ and pray and stuff if you're going to let stuff like this get published. And they went ahead and A&E signed off on that getting published through GQ. And I've been interviewed by a lot of big magazines like Esquire, Time Magazine, Rolling Stone. GQ was going to interview me till they found out Esquire was already doing a profile this year. But the point is that because of liability, those articles are so big, they basically make you sign off on, did you say this? Did you mean this? And the family hasn't released everything, but it's coming out that this was an artificial controversy, and the family has said this, to shut down their religious views and to bully them in a public backlash into basically signing agreements that they won't talk about God and they won't pray. And see, that's how psych warfare works. They get to dominate the news, get Obamacare out of the news, get all the other Benghazi Gate and Fast and Furious out of the news, and get to dominate during the holiday season, during Christmas, with all this other news, all this other garbage, and make it about a civil rights movement for, quote, gay people. And have Cracker Barrel pull their apparel, their camouflage hats off of the store shelves, acting like this was something dirty and bad, what he said, which was his own personal opinion. Sending the message that if you give out your opinion against anything that's in the agenda of the establishment, Obamacare, open borders, gun control, the gay mafia agenda in the schools, if you come out and you speak against that, you are going to be stifled, you are going to be fired, you are going to be boycotted, you're going to be shut down. And, you know, this has not been an issue I've really covered in my 18 years on air because we have a lot of big things going on. And I am a person that's into equality. And I have absolutely no dislike or hatred for anybody. I mean, I just don't. Sorry. No, that kind of ruins the fun to think somebody hates you. But when people start using a civil right movement to beat everybody else over the head and to push a whole other agenda that's connected like train cars to the engine that is the gay agenda, I mean, I'm sick of it. I don't like a salesman coming to my door over and over again. I don't like anybody being pushy. I don't like government being pushy. And this is really pushy and really out of control and is causing a giant backlash. It is. It's causing a huge backlash. And Camille Paglia said it best. She said that this is fascistic and ultra-Stalinistic. So this is the type of issue that we're dealing with where they can set the precedent with everybody going, oh, come on, be nice, you know, be open-minded, oh, come on. They can then open the door up and bring everything else in like they've already done. I mean, look at how they say it's racist if you don't support Obamacare. Look at how they say if you don't support gun control, you're racist. And you're like, explain to me how that's racist. Well, the NRA is the Klan. You're like, actually, the NRA was founded to fight the Klan. Shut up, racist. I've been in debates with people on the radio. I've done a lot of interviews on XM on the different, quote, urban black channels. Some of them friendly, some of them not. Where people say point blank, listen, is it really just that you're racist, that you don't want to restrict guns and have Obamacare? And then you have to sit there. It's like saying, is it true you rape your wife or beat your wife? Is it true you put cigarettes out on your children? Is it true you're a child molester? And it's a way to have the moral authority. And I've gotten to the point where when I'm on these shows, and they also do it on like just liberal Democrat type shows, and people say that, I go, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm here to talk about this issue you had me on about. I'm not going to sit here and defend myself. I'm not going to sit here and say, no, I'm not a racist. Listen, I don't want to turn my guns in. I don't want to be enslaved. I don't want to only have the government with the force. I don't want to live in New York, Chicago, or D.C., where they've taken the guns and they have the highest crime rates in the country. And in the case of Chicago, the world. I don't want to live in Mexico, where they've taken the guns and have the highest crime rate as a nation in the world. Only beat by a city, Chicago, worldwide. Look up the numbers. 70-something thousand dead the last 7-8 years. Or more than that now, actually. 70,000 about a year ago when I checked. Over 10,000 a year that they know of. A lot more dead and missing. MIA. So that's what it comes down to. And they even came out and said, oh my gosh, Fast and Furious, American guns killed Mexicans. It's racist. We've got to ban our guns. Again, that same race issue. When it's the big drug cartels with the big banks flying in, fully auto, grenade launchers, armored vehicles, almost all the weapons the cartels have did not come from the United States. That's in major investigative journal pieces. You can look them up. They're getting their weapons from major defense contractor companies and Wells Fargo and Wachovia owning and leasing the aircraft that fly the weapons in and the drugs out. And that came out in the news. They are constantly having U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, especially U.S. Navy, it keeps popping up, caught, and they'll burn some low-level guys that are caught. We just put one of those articles on screen, shipping grenade launchers, full auto, heavy guns to Mexico. I mean, this is huge shipments of hand grenades. It's just constant. That's what the cartels have. Armored vehicles, grenade launchers, full auto. They're not from gun shops. Doesn't matter, though. We knew about the gun walking case before we knew the name of it, Fast and Furious. We knew that they were going to blame it because the Attorney General was saying when he was in office a year, they were in the news giving press conferences with Janet Napolitano, Janet Reno Part 2, saying we're going to use the fact that these guns are down there killing people, and we have a tracing program to go after the Second Amendment here. And that's why she got caught perjuring herself, because then she said, I never heard of that. And the Attorney General said, I never heard of that, and we played the clips here. And Congress pointed it out. They ran the whole thing. And then I'm like, hey, I don't want to be disarmed. Shut up, racist. Again, this is the literal brainwashing of 2 + 2 = 5. 800-259-9231. 100th anniversary of the Federal Reserve. I want your take on that, the economy next year. Your take on Duck Dynasty, the First Amendment. What's happening with Fukushima, increased radiation, and so much more. I want to talk about all of this coming up today. 800-259-9231. That, oh my gosh, you couldn't sign up. Now you're going to get penalized. It's a gift. Obamacare's a gift to you and your family. The clock to sign up for Obamacare coverage that began January 1st was supposed to run at midnight on Monday, but administration officials have extended it 24 hours through Christmas Eve, according to the Washington Post. The Post reports they did so without any public announcement of the change. Over the weekend, government officials, not servants, and outside IT contractors working on the online marketplace computer system made a software change that automatically gives people a January 1st start date for their new coverage as long as they enroll by 11:59 p.m. on Christmas Eve when Santa Claus comes down the chimney. Isn't that just special? And I figured out why I get so personally disgusted now and I actually get nauseous. I used to get mad. Now I get a nauseous feeling. Because it makes me ashamed of my fellow humans and myself that we're under this yoke. And then it's an admitted horribly evil fraud to abuse everyone. And then we have to sit here and watch the very people that have gotten us caught up in this spaghetti wire, barbed wire mess, this snarl. They've got us tied in knots, and then they will play the part of the saviors untying us, but will only bound us down tighter. And it just goes on and on and on and on because the complexity of the world has gotten the average person to feel overwhelmed and just to go into a catatonic political state and do nothing, to where we're dead in the water and these vampires, these political sharks, can do whatever they want. We're going to get that article up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. That is very, very important. I'm going to come back from break and take your calls at 800-259-9231. There's just so much craziness going on. Obamacare reaches record low in polls, pitched at gay clubs. Yeah, they're pitching it to young people and folks that they think are big supporters of Obama who will just buy into it because it's a religious right to be ripped off. Democratic senators warning of a meltdown if this doesn't get fixed. It's working perfectly. The war on drugs, double, triple, quadruple the drugs on the street, depending on the drug type. Prison populations tripled since they launched it in the 1970s, late 1970s. The banks launder hundreds of billions a year of the drug money and even take control of arming their soldiers. That is a huge success to make drugs illegal, to give them a high price, to create a marketplace, to then have Hollywood and the culture promote them, from rock and roll to the hip-hop people, to everything in between, and then have the young people use it. And as the economy falls apart, that's all that's left in the economy. So women go into the sex trade, and our entire economy converts to gulag casino model that Max Kaiser talks about. AP says the healthcare overhaul is the top 2013 story. The glitch-plagued rollout of Obama and his Barack Obama healthcare overhaul was the top news story of 2013, followed by the Boston Marathon bombing and the dramatic papal changeover at the Vatican, according to the Associated Press annual poll of U.S. editors and news directors. The saga of Obamacare. I mean, look, do you think that when they conquer you, they don't know you're going to hate them and know? We're being conquered, taken over by foreign banks where they can charge unlimited, double, triple, quadruple, or more for health insurance and lower the quality and control our lives with social engineering, monitoring what we eat, where we go, and what we do to put it into a database of social engineering. Of course it's going to come out and be horrible. So they act like it's all a screw-up and a mistake and then say, let us fully socialize it, which is what the architect says is the plan, Ezekiel Emanuel and others. And then their idiot supporters go, oh, genius plan. we support Obamacare now. Wink, wink, you're going to make it totally free and be a money transfer from the rich to us. When meanwhile, the ultra-rich have engineered it. It'll never be socialist. It'll be totally hyper-fascist, worse than socialism by a long measure. I mean, we're talking, I don't know, 10 times worse, 20 times worse? I don't know. I can't put a number on that. I can't quantify that. You can't quantify something this evil. Socialism's bad enough. It always degenerates and falls apart and brings undue control to government and inside groups. But this is a deal where now they'll make it even worse and jack it up even more and have more taxes to fund it, to pay for it, that goes to these insurance companies that should be arrested. These executives that wrote this law. Not just Obama gets in trouble, not just Obama's approval rating goes down, but the people that wrote this need to be hauled up and indicted for fraud. It'll take about 3 months for it all to come in, the wreckage, the water, all of it that's going to hit after 2 years. It took that long to get over here. Will be 10 times the radiation we've been hit with so far. We're going to get into the 100th anniversary of the private run-for-profit Federal Reserve. Chase limits card use for customers at risk in target breach. See how great the cashless society is? And the answer to that is more of the cashless society. The inventor of the AK-47 dies in Russia. He invented it during World War II. The inventor of the Kalashnikov assault rifle, Mikhail Kalashnikov, dies at age 94. So that certainly is momentous. I guess he died on the date of the Federal Reserve's 100th anniversary. That's too bad. That's it. That is an amazing rifle. You can drag it through the mud, anything, compared to other rifles that I own quite a bit of. Really nifty, great little firearm. They say there's hundreds and hundreds of millions of them worldwide. So there's that little piece of news. Briefly, speaking of radiation, the reason I discovered pure atomic nascent iodine is I was researching about 4 or 5 months ago what to do for myself and my family and our thyroids. And it just kept coming up, iodine, but not the bound iodine, which is better than nothing. You can get from some supplements out there, seaweed, like the Modifilin we sell at InfoWarsStore.com or InfoWarsLife.com. That's from the Southern Hemisphere, so it's a lot cleaner. But this is literally the pure atomic. That doesn't mean radioactive. It's just in its atomic form. It's in its raw form. That's why this stuff turns purple, blue, electric color on paper, and other iodines turn black and then turn dark rust red because they're bound. And personally, I can't take it. Gives me stomach aches, things like that. And there's a lot of other research in that you can look into, which it's better than nothing. The point is, this particular iodine, when I started taking it, was so amazing. I found out there's one place that had it, so I basically got the exclusive on it. And that is our InfoWars Life Survival Shield Nascent Iodine Dietary Supplement in 1-ounce bottles, available at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139. Now, you can get the 2-ounce or double the size bottle of fluoride shield that has nascent iodine in it, but also 5 other compounds known to help supercharge detoxifying the body, not just the fluorines and fluoride and bromine and all that, but a bunch of other garbage. And you can see the write-up in the video breaking it down at InfoWarsLife.com. We have a special running on that where you get the survival shield with the fluoride shield and get a discount on both of those at InfoWarsLife.com. And we are also funded by your support, so that's also very, very important. I want to thank all of you. You've heard the rave reviews for Survival Shield, and we haven't really gotten reviews yet for the fluoride shield, but I've been taking it for months before it was even officially produced, the original proprietary blend that I had to sign off on, this formula. So, again, that's all available at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139. And lastly, there's still last-minute Christmas shopping you can do and give the gift of truth. You can get 5.3 months free when you sign up for a year, and one membership is really 11 people can use the same username and passcode to see the nightly news, see all the films, the special live reports, 18 years of material, 11 years of PrisonPlanet.tv. If you haven't become a PrisonPlanet.tv member, it is so essential because then it's our own platform that can't be censored like YouTube and other systems. And it helps feed YouTube and everything else to the public that's not going to pay to learn the truth. So you're helping pay it forward and funding getting the truth out, and our news operation, our TV division, everything being funded by PrisonPlanet.tv subscription. So this Christmas, thank you so much for your gift of time and energy and support. We've made the site better and better. It really works good now. It's had a few bugs over the years. PrisonPlanet.tv. So I salute all the members. And if you are a member, remember, create an original username and passcode that's just for the site so you can share it. Don't use the same passcode for your bank account. And you can change it as well if you want to. And then give that to friends and family in an e-card and say, here's your alternative news, documentary films, subscriber site. You just go put username, passcode in, they're in. Takes about a minute to sign up. PrisonPlanet.tv. Become a member today. We only do this special at the end of the year into New Year's. And it is so essential that we continue to wake people up and build alternative, real, independent media. So again, it's all there at PrisonPlanet.tv or InfoWarsNews.com. Okay, let's go to your phone calls. I appreciate you calling. And when you hear a caller hang up, that's your chance to call in. I'd love to hear from everybody. Rod in France. Hope you're having a great Christmas or holiday over there. He wants to talk about Obamacare and Henry Kissinger. You're on the air. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, hi, Alex. Merry Christmas to you.
You too, brother.
Thank you. I'm an expat, obviously. Been in France for 13 years now. I was wondering, do you think that me being expatriated, I still have an address in the United States with this mandate? Do you think that they would actually try to get me to charge me some type of fine for not signing up if I'm not fiscally in the United States?
Well, that's really what globalism is all about, is that when Snowden, they thought, was trying to fly into Austria, they ordered the plane to land, even though that wasn't under their control. They did it. And so that's what globalism is these global corporations using American energy and power with England and the EU and others, and Japan and China all working together to basically oppress the individual and have nowhere to run. And I have seen discussion of what they call clawing back money from expats. Even if you take off after taxes money offshore, they're now trying to claim that they're going to somehow try to grab international bank accounts, go after, that's what they're going after, Swiss bank accounts, not the billionaires' bank accounts, but the little guys' bank accounts now. And so I think certainly they're going to go after the low-hanging fruit of people that went to sign up for the, quote, free health care, putting in their data, admitting they don't have it, swearing under perjury, so they have them in a court of law, at least on paper, because that's what it says. You waive your rights and you're basically in a court. Just like when you remember the free car deal or the car rebate deal in the auto bailout a few years ago, where when you'd go to the site, it would say the federal government's taking control of your computer. All your data is now ours. You waive all your rights. This is what they do. It's like when you go to the hospital now under Obamacare. On the form, it says under the Affordable Care Act, all your data is now public to all these agencies and groups and whoever we want to give it to. It's basically a bunch of liability protection for the corporations to shut down their competition, shut down the little guy, and do whatever they want. And so I can't give you a definitive answer because they're holding their cards close to their vest. They already are debiting accounts. They're already saying they're going to go after tax refunds. They're already saying they're going to start garnishing wages. That's always been in the legislation. And so now they're going to go after their idiot supporters first, who love being just absolutely beat by the system. They want the punishment. They enjoy it. But as for you, I don't know. But I would imagine down the road, listen, I have California sending me letters saying, you do business in California, you owe us sales taxes. When we clearly have talked to the lawyers, we don't. But most people will get scared under threats of penalty and interest and will start paying these mafia. So I've got tentacles shooting down here from Minnesota, tentacles shooting at me from California, tentacles coming in, and most people get a letter from government or from God, and they literally roll over. So what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I mean, I've already been harassed by the Internal Revenue Service, for claiming zero on my taxes because I have zero income in the United States, and I mean, just literally, facetiously dropping threats over the phone, you're trying to explain yourself, and they just keep saying, well, you're still taxable, you're still taxable. It's like, well, no, I'm not, I don't know. That's why I was asking that question. And I do have a and I do agree with your point of view on that. I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised at all if they just came after me and started, I don't know how they would garnish my wages in France, but considering it's if you look at it from a globalist point of view, there's absolutely a possibility.
Well, listen, these criminal enterprises all fight with each other as well. That's part of why it's so vicious, and because there is a survival of the fittest social Darwinism built in to their own kleptocratic, criminal great games, as they call them, the feeding on the unwashed, gullible masses. But I'm not a tax lawyer, but I've looked at it, and obviously I've looked at leaving the United States before. And if you've paid taxes on everything that you then take out of the nation, they should have no further claim on any of that as long as you don't have any of that apportioned in investments inside the United States. Now, that's debating it from their perspective of fraud. Of course, they're criminal and will take anything they can. Separately, we got the Federal Reserve 100 years ago today, along with the income tax to fund it. So it's all a fraud to begin with. We had 10% growth rates, 10.5% growth rates from 1789 until 1913 on average. We've never had anything near a 10% growth rate in 1 year since then, because the artificial economy is always waging war on the real economy, because it's not enough to just skim money and power off of it. They want to devalue the real economy, devalue their host, tie their host down where their host is unconscious and can't ever struggle back against them. So it's the debasing of the currency and the impoverishment of the host is the goal. In fact, that's the goal of the takeover, is to hurt people and dominate and create pestilence and create darkness. That's what these people do. I appreciate your call. I mean, the evil and the corruption is not a byproduct. It is the journey. It is the ring. It is the goal. It is the land. It is the promised land. It is the destination. The ruination of the individual. The turning yourself over to pure hatred. Just scorn upon scorn for humanity. Abject hate. Huge, endless furnaces of hatred in their heart for us that warm them. So, and our gullibility is the fuel of this whole thing. Let's go ahead and talk to Scott in Vermont. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Alex, yeah, we should be leaving messages with our Congress critters telling them that 100 years of that Ponzi scheme known as the Fed is more than enough, and they need to end the Fed, or we'll end their tenure in Congress. But in the last few weeks or so, I've noticed the hypocrisy and double standard of the left, the authoritarian left. With all in the news was Mandela is great, Mandela. Nothing about the bombings and the terrorism and the violence. It's like the end justifies the means for them. Whereas, he was sort of, they won't say it, they'll admit it outright. If you bring it up to them, they might admit that, it was necessary to do that violence to end apartheid. But if you want, you think you have a right to own a gun, Second Amendment, well, forget that. And even your kid, I noticed a guy called Joyce Riley's show and complained about how his son was told, after his son was attacked by a bully, that the son was told you don't have a right to defend yourself.
Oh, yeah, no. The bullies don't really get in trouble. The ultimate act in a globalist domesticated system is to fight back. In England, they will throw you under the prison if you even raise a hand to defend yourself, even if you're a woman being raped. The ultimate sin is the individual defending themselves against criminal energy.
They don't even have a right to own a gun anymore in England. If somebody breaks in your house there, you have to hit them over the head with a pipe, but even that they'll hold against you, won't they?
Oh, no, you can look it up. They will put you in prison and then let the person that did it go.
But we got to point out the hypocrisy and the double standard that is wrong. It was good that apartheid was stopped, but it's not good that they totally ignored in the media the truth about Mandela and all the violence and the necklacing and the tortures and murders that was done by his order. And they don't want to talk about that, of course.
Very well said, sir. I appreciate your call. Have a great Christmas coming up. We're going to be discussing with the author of Creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin, one of the foremost experts on the Federal Reserve, the 100th anniversary. Up on Infowars.com, we have the article by Michael Schneider on the 100th anniversary of the Federal Reserve. Here are 100 reasons to shut it down forever. And I'm going to go over some of those 100 with him and talk about where we're going. But here's the really good news. We stopped the expansion of the Syria war. We exposed that our criminal government's running al-Qaeda and is illegitimate. We have exposed Obamacare as a total fraud. We defeated their attempted gun grab in 2013, and actually the polls show it reversed because people had common sense understanding of why blame the general public for what Prozac head Democrat devil worshippers do, and that's just who the shooters are. And crime rates down 50-something% with guns. Other crimes not involving guns are actually up now because of the economy falling apart. Thank God for guns actually keeping law and order. The police would be completely overrun and overwhelmed like they are in Chicago and New York and D.C. if it wasn't for guns in other parts of the country. I mean, you don't see home invasions. You don't see thugs walking around Texas up to you at gas stations at night when I was pumping gas last night with my son because, they know most people are packing. By the way, I was packing. I had a M4 right there in the back seat of the truck where I was pumping gas. M4, boom. Locked and loaded in 1 second if I needed to be. And that's a good feeling. That's a real good feeling. And that's a feeling of being a man in charge of my own security and my family's security. And that's what it comes down to. Quite frankly, I also had a judge circuit rider with me right there with 45 long Colts as well. Only reason I had that in the car, though, is we were doing some target practice a few days ago. I don't know, a friend's place, so that's why both those are still in the car. Usually, there is another firearm in the vehicle for the protection of the family, but I had that in the house cleaning it. But that's what it comes down to in this country. We're going to go to break and come back with Chris, and then we're going to go to Ryan, and then Nathan, and then Brandon, and then at the second segment, 8 after next hour, we're going to have constitutional lawyer Bruce Fine on the broadcast with us. But what I want to get at here is we are on the march. The empire is on the run, and their counter-offensives against us are these attempts to shut down free speech, are these attempts to scare us into submission. The good news is the average person in the system is in the same boat as us and stands to gain for being in a free country. And the tide is turning. People are waking up. Every number shows that. Congress has a 6% approval rating. No government's ever been that unpopular. Bad-mouthing the Founding Fathers and all of our Bill of Rights. By every yardstick, we are living in the midst of a high-tech amalgamation of socialism, communism, and fascism with a technological technocracy setting up an autocratic system above it, where the globalists are above the law in the ultimate form of total discrimination against humanity. And the public doesn't know that because we're too busy fighting over gay, straight, black, white, old, young, Christian, atheist. I mean, they've really divided and conquered us, and the average person out there loves fighting with each other, though they're starting to wake up. And it's just so frustrating to see us all being cheated and robbed, and to see the bureaucrats and government people that have been trained to see us as prey when we're all prey. And I want to change this. The world's never going to be a perfect place till our Lord and Savior returns, but we can make it a better place if we try. If not, we give it over to evil. When good people do nothing, evil takes over. Chris in Florida, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex, first-time caller. Just want to say Merry Christmas, and I wanted to ask you a quick question, and here's a real simple one. What is the best way for an ordinary citizen, for an ordinary person who works limited hours a week, to boycott the Federal Reserve, boycott the IRS, show them that we're not going to take this. We're not going to sit here and be taxed for foreign banks for all these derivatives. We're not going to take this anymore. What can an individual personally do in his own life?
Well, here's the issue. No matter how many taxes we pay, they're always going to spend more than comes in to bankrupt us under Cloward and Piven. That's the admitted plan. And of course, they did that previously to that sociological development and idea developed by the Democrats in the 60s. That's a good example of them being honest about how they operate. Make us poor so they can control us. But as a point of fact, you can't survive, in many cases, playing ball and going by all their rules. It's designed by criminals to make it impossible. But to ensnare you for not following the rules because they're exempt. So it's like they're running a race, but you're wearing bowling balls around your legs, running in flypaper, and they're running on a totally clean athletic track. So they rig the game. They fix the deck. They stack the deck. If I was you, I would make your own personal decisions. If you're fighting them on a large scale, out in the open, with a bunch of crew members like myself, I pay the ransom to the private Federal Reserve through the IRS because they would shut me down, they would arrest me, and they have kangaroo juries that would send me to a gulag. Okay? So I can then educate people that it is a ransom, it is the mafia, they'll break your legs. But there are 60 million people estimated, not counting illegals, who don't pay the income tax and aren't in the system. And it is hurting them. That's why they want to get rid and make the underground economy illegal so you can't survive. So you barter as much as you can. You support local as much as you can. You go to farmers markets. You go to swap meets. You can go to, you notice all the big corporations don't want to take cash now. You keep cash in. You go to places like Goodwill where you can find some of the coolest clothes anywhere that all these rich people just throw out that fit you perfectly. So you don't buy from the big corporations. You buy as much American as you can. You support the independent free media. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, but a lot of people individually, are dropping out of the system. Not getting their kids' Social Security numbers, finding like-minded people. And if there's so many of us off the reservation, they can't get us all. They need us to comply. So people are leaving Mordor. They are leaving Babylon. They are leaving Egypt. Does that answer your question? Coming up in the next segment, constitutional lawyer Bruce Fein will be with us for about 40 minutes. Then I'm going to get into Fukushima. We've been living with this for over 2 years, and even I've gotten to where I'm not been covering it like I should. Surge in cancers among young in Fukushima, but experts divided on the cause. And U.S. sailors that helped are in lawsuits over increased cancers. And we're seeing record radiation levels and a big wave about to hit the U.S. I'm going to cover that. Then we're going to have some other guests popping in on the 100th anniversary of the private Federal Reserve. Right now, let's go back to your calls. Nathan in Texas, thank you for calling in today.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, brother.
I have a question about the kind of depopulation agenda. As far as like Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey and all of them, like in that conference, I read online that Bill Gates wanted to cap the global population at 8.3 billion. I don't know what significance that has, but what do you think about that?
Well, look, they have a public face for population reduction and global one-child policies, and they have their internal documents that we've sourced and covered in films like Endgame, and then many since that film came out almost 8 years ago. But Bill Gates has said that he wants in conferences to actually bring the number of humans putting out carbon dioxide down to zero, and then everybody laughs because they can see the equation. And he's promoted death panels and all the rest of it. But in their internal documents, and then when they also have made public statements, they debate 80 to 90% reduction, and they rest on average at about an 80% reduction. That's kind of like We Are Change about a year ago was able to talk to Ted Turner on the street. And Ted Turner, said that he wanted the world at about a billion. I'm going from memory. Maybe he said 500 million. He said 500 million in a newspaper interview, but I think he said a billion. And then another speech, he said 3 billion. So the point is that they're using the excuse of claiming there's overpopulation, which you can debate either way, as the excuse for them to have an organized system and for them to rule the world and have autocratic control. But then they're the people with 5, 6, 7 kids living in this largesse, and they're really just anti-human. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I see exactly what you're saying. Yeah. And,
but I see the public all lackadaisical and so relaxed and not caring, and the globalists say, well, see, they deserve to die. They don't even care. They write public papers, and they say they do that because the slaves need to, have a chance to know it was there. It's kind of like legally publishing a thing in the newspaper that you're going to repossess something or that you're going to publicly do something, and if the folks don't respond, that's their fault for not reading the public notices. It's like a vampire has to ask permission to get in your house. Does that answer your question?
Yes, exactly. And another point to that, I'm in college, and everywhere I go, I'm looking around. Everybody's on their phones, and I just noticed that it's hard to find people who don't like take their eyes off technology. I go around talking to people. I'm a pretty talkative person, and
no, the general public has lower brain waves. They're in a trance. This is the insertion into the matrix. Then it's goggles. Then it's a port. Then it's in your brain, and that is the evolution. If you could see it in a time lapse over the next 20 years, it's basically televisions, flat screens, iPads, iPods, Google Glasses, TV, contact lenses, brain ports, and then basically you would see the television turn into a monster in our hand that then goes on our face like an alien attached to us, and then down our throat, and then we die. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, man.
It's going to get a lot crazier. This is the beginning of the meltdown of society. This is it. We're taking your phone calls here today. G. Edward Griffin is coming up in the next hour. Bruce Fine a little bit later in the hour. We'll talk about the monopolar government we have, the dictatorship that's being set up. 100 years of the private Federal Reserve, ladies and gentlemen. That is a big deal, and we're taking your phone calls right now. Look at this headline from My Fox New York. The next Detroit, Atlantic City, and Las Vegas facing catastrophic collapse. And I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I go up to Dallas about once a year. Dallas looks bad. Houston looks bad. And remember, Texas is one of the most wealthy on average and financially best places to live in the country. General wealth, general per capita, low expense in living, low taxes, jobs. Texas is one of the best places, if not the best in the country. And San Antonio doesn't look as good as it used to look. The Riverwalk isn't busy like it used to be when I'm out there most of the time. The shops aren't busy. The hotels aren't full like they used to be. Austin isn't as busy, even though it is the mecca of the nation now, the fastest growing city in the United States, per capita highest income in the United States for the average income. The ultra-rich at San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, D.C., but for just general wealth, Austin, Texas. Best place to live, and Forbes and Money and Time Magazine. And either a place is really hot or it's closed. Almost everywhere that restaurants I went to for 20 years are gone. All of them. Barbecue places I would go in that would be absolutely full any time of day. No one's in there. And the wait staff, you can tell nobody's giving them tips. People are bummed out. I try to give folks as big a tip as I can, and they just can't believe it when I give them a decent tip. And it's so sad to see our country, especially during the Christmas holiday times, going into this, and it hurts my soul. Charity's way down, and the average person is just looking at their iPad, looking at their droid, not even talking to other people. It is so sad, but there is an awakening at the same time. People are either waking up or they're going deeper into a trance. 800-259-9231. Then I've got some other economic news that we're going to be going over as well. And guys, I've hit print on this Fox article a couple times. Did it come out in the printer out there? I don't know. Or we may have to reinstall this printer in here because I like to print stuff instead of just looking at it on screen that we have a hard copy if they change the news story, which they do sometimes, and because it's easier to find. But the headlines, the next Detroit, Atlantic City, and Las Vegas facing catastrophic collapse. With the closure of the recent Atlantic Club Casino Hotel, rumors of the bankrupt being sold to Hard Rock, more than half of the mortgages in Las Vegas underwater, casinos opening up all around the country, and online gambling legislation underway in various states. It seems as if the reason for the very existence of Atlantic City and Las Vegas are in serious jeopardy. Yeah, Las Vegas, all those places are going to end up being tombs. A tomb in the desert and a tomb on the side of the Atlantic Ocean. And it's globalism. It's not just these cities like Detroit and other areas. We were going to be a service economy. That was never the plan. We are being deindustrialized right now. As a civilization, that is the plan to make us completely and totally manageable by the establishment. And now they don't want us speaking out. So political correctness is now the model to come in and chill free speech, but to make not having free speech like a civil right. Oh, Muslims don't like selling alcohol at grocery stores that sell wine and beer, so we're not going to sell wine and beer, or they don't have to serve you. And you think of that as a civil right about their rights, but then it just becomes a thing to walk on everybody else's rights. And that's what's going on here. That's the program, and it's very, very sad. Now, joining us is constitutional lawyer and Ron Paul's chief advisor on law. He's Associate Deputy Attorney General and General Counsel of the Federal Communications Commission under President Reagan. He served as research director for Republicans on the Joint Congressional Committee on Covert Arms Sales to Iran and on the American Bar Association's Committee on Presidential Signing Statements. He's also a visiting fellow of the Constitutional Studies of the Heritage Foundation and adjunct scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. Bruce Fine is the founding member of Bruce Fine & Associates, a law corporation, is a principal of the public advocacy organization, the Lynchfield Group. He is an author of The Constitutional Peril, The Life and Death Struggle for a Constitutional Democracy and American Empire Before the Fall. Excellent books, both. Lynchfieldgroup.org. He presently serves as senior policy advisor, again, to Ron Paul 2012 presidential campaign and beyond. And I want to cover the waterfront with him and get into the centralization of power and the testimony they had 3 weeks ago in Congress where liberals, professors said we're going into tyranny, and conservative experts said the same thing. I mean, there's no doubt. So what type, as a historian and a top constitutional lawyer and advisor to Congress, would he call this? But before we get to that, because he did head up the FCC, I know when they opened up the First Amendment and got rid of the so-called Fairness Doctrine, they're trying to bring that back now under new names and restrict free speech everywhere. I'd like to get his take on what Camille Paglia called fascist and ultra-Stalinistic, the Duck Dynasty situation, as a First Amendment expert. Mr. Fine, just briefly on this subject, what do you make of the moves with SOPA and CISPA and fairness doctrines being promoted again and everything when you're one of the guys who never gets really the credit, I know, in being instrumental in getting First Amendment back into the media? You know, we forget for a while we didn't have it in this country, where it is right now and what the goals are.
Well, the restrictions largely remain for only over-the-air broadcasting. It doesn't apply. All these FCC rules that threaten licenses for incorrect speech don't apply to cablecasters or people using the internet or otherwise. It's sort of a vestige of old time thinking, and the idea that government was paternalistic and knew the most enlightened way in which issues should be debated, so they would evaluate the fairness with which a particular radio or television broadcaster covered a controversial issue. I was the spearhead of forcing the abandonment of that process. You can't believe how subjective the standard was for determining whether it's fairness. You counted up the seconds or the half second of devotion to one viewpoint or another. Was it said with Churchillian eloquence or with the clumsiness of a school child who weighed more than the other? It was so arbitrary, it was ridiculous. And of course, since the abandonment of the fairness doctrine, I think the conversation has been much more robust, and fear of the intimidating effects of complaints of the FCC about fairness have lapsed. Now they're trying to bring it back in, and anytime someone goes on the airwaves, says something that other people disagree with, I mean, we ought to applaud that. That's what this country is about. If you're not big enough to be able to accept an idea that you disagree with, you really don't belong here. But that's really what liberty and freedom is about.
Do you agree, as a constitutional lawyer, that it's Stalinistic to demand that Phil Robertson be, quote, re-educated, as GLAAD did?
That sounds like the Chinese re-education camps if you didn't echo Mao Zedong's ideas properly. The fact is, people have a right to dispute what he said and urge him to change his view. He's got a right to insist that he'll listen to them, but he ultimately gets to believe what he wants to believe. That's what freedom is about. And it was Louis Brandeis said, the remedy for what somebody thinks is ill-conceived speech is more speech, not coercion, not intimidation. I mean, I actually had written a letter not long ago in response to a former FCC chairman's insistence that the Federal Communications should prohibit broadcasters from mentioning the word Redskins and talking about the Washington Redskins football team.
Wow.
I said, oh, really? And he said, well, that would show what a great country we were. I said, no, that's not what show a great country we were. It's show that we're hostile to the idea of free minds and people being able to chart their own destiny. And moreover, no one really believes something if you have to cram it down their throat. It's just suppressed, a recitation of what somebody insists that you say. So it really is futile in any event. But the fact is, if people disagree, then they should use the communications channels, the Internet, and all the other countless outlets to express their disagreement.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think this is backfired. And we're going to go to break in a moment and come back with the big central issue of why you agreed to come on during the holidays and Christmas coming up. We really appreciate it, Mr. Fine. But when I just start realizing all the monumental things you've been involved in for liberty, all the times, I probably had you on 15 times over the years in the last decade, I never made the point that you're the guy that helped spearhead the end of the fairness doctrine that didn't allow talk radio as it exists today. That is such a monumental example of what really one person can do then working with others. So I just want to thank you. I mean, I guess I owe much of my First Amendment and my profession to you helping fight that. And I should have you on sometime just to tell that whole story because, I mean, a whole book should be written just on that subject.
Well, I appreciate the sentiment.
We're going to break, but in 1 minute, how did that all come about, just briefly?
The fairness doctrine was repealed through a rulemaking that we initiated. It was imposed not by statute, but by a rule in which had been improperly, in my judgment, interpreted by prior general counsel that the commission has required by Congress. I looked at it, examined the background, and said, no, the fairness doctrine was a result of a rule. We can initiate a revocation of the rule, which we did. It sustained attack in the courts. And the large reason why we repealed it is because we thought it was an unconstitutional encroachment on the right of broadcaster free speech. And it, in fact, had the chilling effect of reducing the broadcasting terrain to pablum and vanilla because no one wanted to say anything controversial because then they get slapped with some kind of fairness.
And that proves that you were right because look at how it saved AM radio for 20-plus years, you doing that. Incredible. When we come back, speaking of rulemaking, rule by decree, Obama and this power grab, how do you as a top constitutional lawyer define it? What is the system we're now under with constitutional lawyer Bruce Fine? Stay with us. You know, when we called you up to get you on about a con as a solution or is it a bad idea to get your take on it, you said, I'll talk about that. We'll do that in the next segment briefly. But I want to talk about the centralization of power and the best way to describe it to the public. And we talked about the hearings they had a few weeks ago in Congress where this is being admitted. And so basically, when do we become a dictatorship and what type of dictatorship it is? Is it when it's institutional and bureaucratic? What do you call that, an oligarchy?
Well, I call it one-branch government that is indistinguishable from the tyranny that provoked the American Revolution. And let me try to enumerate the most egregious usurpations of power. And let me just add as an aside, the problem is not that we need a Constitution Convention to change the Constitution. We need politicians and the people to insist on following the Constitution instead of flouting it regularly. But in any event, perhaps the most awesome power that the president exercises, this is probably in the history of the world, is the ability to kill anybody on the planet who he in secret determines is an imminent, whatever imminent could be in the next 10 years, an imminent danger to the national security of the United States. And the president has done this with regard to 4 U.S. citizens so far that we know of. There may be more, hundreds of foreigners. He is not accountable for any error. That is, neither Congress nor the courts nor anyone gets to know whether or not who was killed was innocent, indistinguishable from what we would ordinarily call first-degree murder. For example, about a year ago, a 68-year-old grandmother in Pakistan picking vegetables with a 9-year-old granddaughter. Now, it is impossible, Alex, to conceive of a more awesome power than the authority to vanquish, to exterminate any person on the planet that you wish with no accountability to anyone. That would have made King George III blush. But that's just one example. The Constitution entrusted to Congress the exclusive power to decide on war or peace, because it's fraught with so many terrible consequences. presidents routinely, and this president in Libya, he was going to go into Syria until the American people spoke up against it. He runs warfare in Yemen and Pakistan unilaterally without any congressional authorization. I say the founding fathers believed that constant warfare was irreconcilable with liberty, which obviously it is. One of the reasons why we have the Ed Snowden revelations and the what a federal judge called an Orwellian surveillance state is because we purport to be at perpetual warfare with international terrorism, whatever that means in the president's head. So we have both the usurpation of war, the usurpation over the right to decide life or death. The president has authority to detain any American citizen at Guantanamo Bay or elsewhere. No accusation or charge, just if he says you're associated with some group connected with Al-Qaeda. To repeat what I alluded to earlier about the surveillance state, we have the National Security Agency, one headed by someone who, without rebuke by the president, knowingly and purposely lied to Senator Ron Wyden when he preposterously lied denying the NSA was collecting data on millions of Americans. Open and notorious lie. I was on the Iran-Contra Committee, and there were people in the executive branch who went to prison for misstating, making false representations about funding the Nicaraguan resistance or arms shipments to Iran. They went to prison, and we have somebody, Mr. Clapper, who's actually promoted for lying to Congress.
That's right. In fact, Poindexter did a lot less than Clapper. Clapper bald-faced lied in the committee and got caught and has not gotten in trouble. And that sets the precedent, doesn't it, to now get away with even more?
Yeah, it sort of sets the precedent. Say, these are principles, all that I've articulated. They lie around like loaded weapons ready to be used by any occupant, any executive branch that claims any preposterous excuse. Now, we also have now the idea, Alex, of treaties to sort of become antiquated. And where formerly we needed treaties for NATO, treaties for the Japanese Defense Treaty or South Korea, we needed treaties even to regulate migratory birds. Now the president, by executive order, which means unilaterally, pledges 10, 20, 30 more years of military commitment in Afghanistan or Iraq or elsewhere. So we no longer have the treaty check on these adventures abroad by the president, which end up having men and women courageous, killed, die for nothing at extravagant expense, and typically end up with some kind of blowback. Right now, for example, we already see that in Syria, the unilateral effort to so-called arm the dissidents looks like we'll end up with a jihadi state that's indistinguishable from Taliban and Afghanistan.
Bruce, stay there. We've got a final segment with you when you come back to finish up and tell us what we do about this and you know, tell us where this eloquent breakdown is basically ending up and how we counter it. Straight ahead after this quick break with Bruce Fine, and we'll also tell you about his latest book. Stay with us. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com. He's breaking down all the usurpations of what Obama's done. And sure, other presidents have done some of this, but now there's no way to chronicle it all, but it's got to be double what other presidents have done. It seems like the bottom's fallen out. So if he doesn't get in trouble or if this isn't reversed, what comes out of that? The bureaucracy's hungry for more power. The Republican leadership's hungry for more power. They're going after Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, who dare, have sanity. And so, Bruce, continuing with what Obama's doing and where it's all going and how we counter it.
Well, the fact is it's been a one-way trajectory through both the Republicans and Democratic White Houses. It's true that under Obama it sort of reached its peak with regard to the level of one-branch government. I mean, the president goes on, for example, with their absurd Obamacare malfunctions, and then by a press conference he amends the statute and says, well, you don't need to have insurance this day, and unilaterally decides that you don't have to enforce the immigration laws if you're within the X, Y, and Z, and the criminal laws get changed unilaterally by the president going on a press conference. I mean, didn't he read when he was at Harvard Law School, like me, that you actually have to have a congressional statute to amend the laws, the House and the Senate, the president get involved? These are flagrant violations of his duty to faithfully execute the laws, and indeed, that clause was written into the Constitution because British monarchs suspended and refused to enforce laws enacted by Parliament, initially those directed at Catholics. And here we have a president whose earmark is deciding he doesn't like a law, he'll just decide not to enforce it however he wishes. That's a combination of what we disclosed in my service on the Presidential Task Force on Presidential Signing Statements. The President signs a bill and says, all right, I'll enforce the parts I like, and the parts that I think are a little extravagant or I think are unconstitutional, I simply won't enforce. And the only way that this trajectory is going to be halted is American people pressuring Congress to do their duty. They've got to insist that the remedy, if the president doesn't halt it, and I understand people get worried about the I word, that's impeachable offense. If you do not take care that the laws be faithfully executed, you are usurping the powers of Congress. The I is involved in the articles of impeachment drafted by the House Judiciary Committee against President Richard Nixon. This is 1974. And they use words like, failure to faithfully execute the laws was a foundation for an impeachable offense.
Bruce, let me ask you this question, and then continue with your line of logical breakdown here and where it's going if we don't reverse it. And we've only covered a few of these dictatorial rule by press conference where he doesn't even put out an executive order, as you just pointed out now, which is obviously out of control and can't amend law. Now he just speaks like, I guess, the Pope, ex-cathedra, I think they call it, from the royal seat, there at St. Peter's Basilica. But we don't have an emperor. We don't have a religious leader. Obama is not our religious leader. My biggest issue, and I'm no lawyer, but explain to me what this is in law. I know that if a law is not equally applied, it's a fraud. How can he give waivers for Obamacare to just his friends? How can he give waivers to General Electric to not shut down their coal power plants, but shut down others? To me, that's the ultimate form of illegal takings, of discrimination, of economic warfare. And no one's even discussing that angle. Isn't that really the biggest abhorrence here to everybody?
It's one. I don't know whether I'd rank it at the very top. There are a lot of candidates for that notoriety, but certainly that flouts what I explained was the duty to faithfully execute the laws. And faithfully execute them means to apply them even-handedly. In fact, one of the greatest checks the Founding Fathers understood against abuses were the requirement that the law be applied equally to everyone. So if it applies to your enemies, it's got to apply to your friends. That's a huge check on government abuse. And when you permit, selective application, you're just inviting some kind of tyranny. It was warned about 70 years ago by then Attorney General Robert Jackson that we've now got so many laws on the books that the real danger we confront is having prosecutors or executive officials find an offender and then pin an offense on them rather than find an offense and then go looking for the culprit. And that's what we end up with, personalized justice that we associate with Russia or China, rather than blind justice that we associate with the Supreme Court and the statute of justice and, indeed, the United States Constitution itself. But what you pointed out is simply another reason why we need to shrink this Leviathan state, get it back into a situation where liberty is the rule rather than the exception, and then we don't permit the government then to be used as a bludgeon to help
Sure.
destroy enemies.
I'm asking you, as a student to the teacher, what is it where you shut down your competition and then only you're allowed to operate? For me, that's open racketeering, open mafia tactics beyond communist or even fascist. It's purely criminal what I see Obama doing across the board.
Well, let's say the theory of law is called selective prosecution or selective application of the law based upon an invidious element. It could be racial, it could be religious, or it could be political, as you're pointing out. But that's what it is, a selective rather than an even-handed enforcement of the law that violates our basic concepts of due process and equal protection.
And what do you do in the face of that? Where is this all going if we don't turn it around? If you look at the way civilizations rise and fall.
Yes, I have. And I feel, Alex, we have 20 to 30 years before we have complete one-branch government rule by decree. We have presidential encyclicals, I guess, instead of papal encyclicals. We have 20 to 30 years if we don't turn this around. And it's clear that it's going to turn around only if you and me, we the people, stand up and protest. We should refuse to support anybody running for Congress who doesn't make an open pledge to impeach the president, a president who violates his duty to faithfully execute the laws, who usurps the war power, who kills American citizens without due process. That ought to be a pledge every candidate for Congress ought to be forced to take in order to win your support, because otherwise they end up being wallpaper. They're just spectators as the president does all the significant things. which is where we are today. And the Constitution is in dire danger precisely because of that complacency.
And you wrote your latest book just a couple years ago. We'll put it on screen for folks out there, American Empire Before the Fall. And I read it. And now exactly what you said in the book is now degenerating quickly. And I know you're being conservative saying 20 years, and empires do take sometimes hundreds of years to die, but the way things are accelerated with technology and how small the world is now, my gut tells me we're going to get into a pickle in 4 or 5 years or 10 years. I mean, this is...
We could, because there are all sorts of events that we definitely can't foresee with precision that could accelerate it. So I say, 20 or 30 years, that obviously assumes that there isn't some kind of particular cataclysmic event. Because I believe, Alex, that if we had somebody in the White House who wanted to today go on television this evening and say, ladies and gentlemen, I have suspended the Constitution indefinitely to make you safe and make you wealthy. The Congress is frozen. It doesn't work anymore. The dangers abroad are too acute to tolerate the slowness of the Constitution. I believe a president today who did that, including Obama, would get away with it. The Congress would not impeach, and right now the American people are too sheep-like to stand up and protest that, no, you have returned ourselves to the days of King George III. You can't, this is not tolerable. That is how far I believe our political culture has decayed.
Unfortunately, Ron Paul agrees with you. I agree with you. Every learned person that studies this, it's as obvious as the nose on my face or your face. And you see Obama saying 5 years ago, I can't do that. Congress has got to be there hundreds of times. And then, well, I'd like to bypass them, but I can't. And now, I'm going to bypass them to keep you safe and fix things. And then his own law that he helped write, he then says, I'm going to become a dictator, basically, and selectively enforce what I want to make it work. They have created the crisis. They're not letting it go to waste. And so we are here seeing them set the table for a near future crisis, be it collapse, financial problems, war, to claim Congress is broken and doesn't work. So what do we, Bruce Fine, do about that right now?
Well, I say it's become politically active and insist Congress is really institutionally the branch that's entrusted to rectify the problem, because the only ultimate check on the president is impeachment and removal from office, because they're not a safe steward of our liberty. And that means you've got to be concerned about your member of Congress, and you need to watch and write letters and say you're not going to vote. You will not support a member who doesn't protect our liberties and freedom from oppression by the executive branch. Otherwise, the system is broken, and we will go the way of all prior 73 empires and destroy ourselves. We won't be destroyed from external forces. It'll be ruination and tyranny self-imposed.
Now, if you look at that historically, normally, as you know, or if you disagree, tell me, Mr. Fine, that when tyrannies come in, people don't usually see it until it's already there and until it's collapsing, and then the rats all abandon the ship. We have a chance with our republic, our history, with all the people that have warned us, like yourself and Dr. Paul, to try to avert repeating history. But, I mean, I think we can say the executive has become dictatorial, a dictatorship. Obama may leave, but the power structure wants that dictatorial control, and they're playing with fire, to say the least. And I do see some good signs, though, where people said no to the Syria expansion. We're saying no to more gun control. We see the states rallying. What do you think about getting the states to rally and send public petitions or to use their bully pulpits to expose this?
There's no doubt. Those city councils, state gubernatorial proclamations, state legislatures passing resolutions. It harkens back to the precedent of the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions authored by James Madison and Thomas Jefferson protesting the usurpations and suppression of speech by the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798. So that's a time-honored way in which we can protest officially. That should be every single state in the Union should be doing this. We don't want this, and that way to protest against the surveillance state? No. We'd rather be free and have liberty rather than have you gather every nook and cranny of information about me that could be abused for political purposes. All these public statements are critical. We have to be engaged. And you're absolutely right. Typically, tyrannies come by inches, not in one fell swoop. and where we see every day of more and more encroachment. And what is equally appalling is that when we end up with presidential candidates, the last race between Romney and Obama, neither of them was saying anything about, well, our presidency is too big. Both parties were equally complicit. And I say that's one of the things that we have got to accept is if neither party stands up and rolls back the executive tyranny, we need a new party. Neither of them can be trusted with keeping the republic alive.
Well, I think everyone out there should buy your book, and they should send your book on the collapse and death of empires to their state legislatures, to Congress. But when I look at Congress on C-SPAN, they know what they're doing. We see the states responding, saying this is tyranny. We need to block this federal power grab. But I don't see that happening in Congress, and I see them circling the wagons against the sane people, the few people that are there, like Walter Jones and Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and others. I do see a big crop of libertarians getting in there on the shoulders of Ron Paul and others, but it really freaks me out to see the power structure not even wanting checks and balances, because even a wise tyranny would want to have a velvet glove. I don't know why the establishment wants to lose its soft power, and I'm not even endorsing evil here. I'm just saying I'd rather have a boss hog who doesn't wreck the whole show than just the wild-eyed, imperious nature. What can you say, being up in D.C. and working around this for so many years, about the spirit and the behavior of the leadership of both parties? Because they really seem to think their armored vehicles and their billions of bullets and their black uniformed federalized police are a power that is unstoppable. And I don't think they're in control of themselves, is what I'm saying. I think they're the great danger to themselves.
Well, they are, and leadership is a euphemism because I call them the invertebrate species, as they are persons who lack conviction, who go along to get along and are infatuated with themselves. They're megalomaniacs, egomaniacs, exceedingly vain, and they don't want accountability for anything, and that's why they just push it all of the executive branch and then run in the bunker and hide. And the fact is that they don't like the challenges posed by people like me and you and Ron Paul and Walter Jones and others. I mean, John Boehner denounced people who are suggesting that a bloated 3.7 or 3.8 trillion budget was a cave-in, didn't do anything to rectify the extravagance of the federal system that's led us to $17, $18 trillion in national debt. It's really an obscenity that we will thrust upon posterity, who will not have gotten any of the luxuries that we did with all of that spending. And what we need, as to say, is the American people, and they showed it in Syria, Alex. They stood up in Syria, 50,000 to 1 said no, and finally Congress then got the message.
So historical. So that is the glimmer of hope. And on so many fronts, the awakening is happening. Congress with a 6% approval rating. What's your prognosis then? I mean, we've got a good chance of turning the corner if everybody who loves liberty really gets aggressive?
Yes, we can turn the corner, and what we have, Alex, that no other prior empire has, we have our founding documents. Our birth certificate is steeped in liberty. It's steeped in checks and balances. It's steeped in small government and the individual at the center of our constitutional universe. So we have genuine roots that are venerated that we can return to. No other empire had that, but it's up to us to restore the virtues and the values of the republic that led to our independence in 1776. And these people who argue, well, that was before the internet, that was before globalization, they don't really understand anything about life, because human nature, the DNA of the species, has been the same for 4,000 years and it always will be. And the Founding Fathers understood all of that, and they understood the narrative, the motives that caused power to be abused.
Well, and as you know, the Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, Constitution is the flower of the Renaissance and the flower of thousands of years of common law in Europe and of Mosaic law and of the best systems, and that it's the modern idea. It's the best of thousands of years of revolution against tyranny. It's the greatest ideals of freedom. It's the modern document. What we're going back to is classical tyranny.
Exactly right. One branch government. Most primitive political societies are all led by one particular leader. It's only the sophisticated, mature society that has the idea of checks and balances. We are retrogressing, if you will. You know, it was we were going backward prior to 1776 in our political status, and that is what we have the ability in.
Absolutely. Bruce Fine, have a wonderful new year. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and folks can find your books on Amazon and many other places. Thank you so much for spending time.
Thank you.
All right, there he goes. There's also more and more mainstream media freaking out over the bullets, the armored vehicles, the militarization of police. Now they're expanding huge units of militarized police, not for single SWAT raids, but for armed combat with the American people, and federalized local units for combat against the state government. The feds are actually militarizing police under the COG for war with the state governments. And that's actually in the Defense Authorization Act, the John Warner Defense Authorization Act of 2007. I mean, man, I read this stuff, and it's just so real, and I can't believe it's all happening. Look, I know why people tune in for the first time and go, there's no way this is going on, but now you see it all happening, so my credibility's gone way up. This isn't about my credibility. I wish I'd been discredited. I wish this wasn't real. This is white-knuckle, hold-fast type stuff here, okay? I mean, we're really facing hardcore tyrants that want to bankrupt us on purpose. And it's so ridiculous. All the people that work for the system, it's going to destroy you too. It's America that made us wealthy. I'm getting chills right now, literally. It is America, and basic due process is the prosperity, and when you lose that, you lose everything. I'm going to go to Ryan, and I'm going to go to others here in just a moment before Griffin comes on. We'll get Griffin on at about 10 after or so. Briefly, we are listener-supported and funded. When you spread the word about the broadcast, when you buy the books, the videos, the T-shirts at made-in-1776.com or at InfoWarsStore.com, that supports our operation. It's a one-of-a-kind deal. We couldn't do it without you and our friends in the alternative media. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much, all of you out there. And we're all in this together. We're like an endangered species here that's having an effect together, and we're all in this together. Drudge Report, WorldNet Daily, InfoWars, you know, the other groups that are out there. That's why I had to quit fighting with Glenn Beck, even though he was attacking me and stuff, is because he's doing a lot of good, folks. And even if he wants to attack me, fine, I'm just going to take it. Because we got bigger enemies like the New World Order, folks. I really care about my kids. I sort of hyperventilate when I think about this, almost having an anxiety attack. In fact, lately I've been having more of those where I got to get some air into my lungs because this stuff is so real. It's so horrible. And so please support the broadcast. Please become a InfoWars Nightly News member. You get all my films, see the Nightly News when it's live, when it first airs, all the documentaries, all the expanded extras, the live events. The site really works well. It takes about a minute to sign up with your credit card or debit card. Username and passcode. Create one that you can share with friends and family. 11 people can log in simultaneously. That is at cost, folks, to pay for the bandwidth and the site and the cameras and the reporters. We couldn't do it without PrisonPlanet.tv. So thank you for being members. PrisonPlanet.tv. It is the perfect last-minute Christmas gift where you don't have to fight the traffic, fight the crowds. You go to PrisonPlanet.tv, create an extra membership if you already have one, or share the one you've got now. Create a username and passcode you can share. Give it to your friends and your family. It's got PayPal, all the systems on there. Give it to your friends and family. $5.95, you can get a trial month membership or get a year and get 5+ months free. And just simply give it to friends and family. Say, here's your e-card, or say, here's your hand card, and say, here's PrisonPlanet.tv or InfoWarsNews.com. Go there. It's got incredible high-def films, documentation, Agenda 21, Obamacare, you name it. Really interesting stuff. If you want to know what's happening, a nightly news show 5 nights a week. It's all there, and a lot of them will end up watching it. You can wake somebody up while supporting the transmission. Well, we're seeing record cold and ice storms out there during the global warming. The North Pole got thicker than ever recorded because Al Gore said it'd be melted by this winter. But I guess he's right. We're wrong. Let's go to your phone calls right now. Then G. Edward Griffin's coming up with more of your calls and a ton of news I haven't gotten to yet. Ryan in Texas, thanks for holding. You're on the air, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Alex. Does the First Amendment of the Constitution still protect me to express my thoughts about Christmas on the air?
Sure, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that. Well, in order to really break down what these globalists are doing and to wake up the average person, we need to really let them know how the subconscious mind actually works and how it functions. and how the psychological warfare games are being played. One thing you'll hear about that they still do, and I think I was saying something about this one time, it's called defining the enemy. In order to have a war, you have to have an enemy. And
you have to first demonize the enemy and dehumanize them.
And nowadays they call it forming your target market for the group of people you're going to sell to. And that's basically the group of people you're trying to attack. But I'll go ahead and sum it up for you. Today, the war on terror, I feel like it's a modern-day equivalent of the Salem witch trials, if you ask me.
Yeah, and they make everyone the terrorist because you can't find out where they are. The war on terror is the war on the individual by the kleptocratic state. Exactly.
And the word conspiracy, if you really want to break it down on Greek and Latin root word levels, the word con in Spanish, when you con someone, you trick them like a con artist. Conspiracy, a derivative of the word spirit. Conspiracy, you con someone's spirit with a psychological warfare game.
Well, what they're really saying is they're saying you're in a conspiracy if you don't believe in us. You're a heretic.
Well, yeah, that's because you're exactly right. And the way they do that is to convert your belief system into a state of perpetual bondage of what the establishment wants you to function as based upon their social and psychological and engineering games that they play. And one of the ways they do it is, well, the brain has wavelengths, and the way it works is the algorithm of our voices and sounds that we hear, words, thoughts, and actions. It's all a big equation of how it all goes together.
That's right. And if you're not conscious of the manipulation with the light waves, the cadences, all of it, they put you into subconscious mode for literal programming as if you're hypnotized. And that's why so much of the public seems like they're hypnotized now and will do anything and go, I like Obamacare, even if it triples my prices, because they've been programmed that they're part of the winning team and that they're winning by doing that. But if they ever became conscious, they would then be aware of it. But see, they don't want to become conscious because deep down, even below what's on the surface of their subconscious, deeper subconscious knows that they're actually losers that are failing and being conned. So they project from the subconscious through the conscious that you're the one causing the problem because you're telling them that they're doing something bad or being conned. They are projecting onto you and are angry at the messenger, telling them, hey, your liver's going to fail if you keep drinking a bottle of vodka every night. And they're like, shut up and don't tell me what I got to do in my life. I'll drink all I want. Or, it's the same thing. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Well, yeah, and technology is the willing partner in this whole mess because, as one of the gentlemen was saying earlier, and as you're saying, everybody's zombied out and into a state of subconscious. They're all too busy looking at their smartphones. I mean, we live in the third dimension, Alex. These screenagers, as we know them, they're busy staring their whole lives at a screen, which is basically a one-eyed monster that depicts something from a higher image to a lower image. And when a mirror speaks, the reflection lies, just like in the Cult of Personality song. And speaking of which, they're trying to redefine every form of human behavior as unsafe. And that's why they bring in the police state, because they have to justify the fact to spy on people, and they treat us like prisoners. And they
no, exactly. Tyrannies always make the general public criminals so that we can all be enslaved. It's a new form of slavery. That's what political correctness is, and you've hit the nail directly on the head. Great call, Ryan. All right, Brandon and others, your calls are coming up. G. Edward Griffin and more. So the real takeover, if you have to mark one moment of a globalist coup, was 1913. But ever since then, they've been usurping more and more power. So I wanted to get G. Edward Griffin's take on some other news that ties into this, the attacks on free speech, what's happening with the economy. But first, I wanted to get him to break down what this means to him 100 years under this and how far we've come. 20 years ago, almost no one knew it was private. They laugh at you if you said it wasn't federal. Now almost everyone knows it's a sham and that it's actually they're running things to a great extent outside of Congress. And former head of the Federal Reserve famously told Lair Newsnight or Lair NewsHour that, oh, no one can regulate the Fed. It's above government, which, of course, is a total fraud. And now the president says he's above Congress and that the UN is above Congress. So the trampling of our rights is accelerating. And, G. Edward, thank you for coming on with us, and Merry Christmas.
Well, thank you, Alex, and the same to you. I like your introductions because you always take all of the burden off of me. You've just about said everything that I wanted to say.
No, but repeat it in your learned way.
Well, I don't know about that learned part, but, when you think back on the fact that this creature from Jekyll Island, the Federal Reserve System, is actually 100 years old, it's it's appalling to me that the nation has survived it because, as you pointed out, it's a private corporation run for profit. And that's not so bad. I like private corporations run for profit, but I don't like them when they have the power of government behind them and they have the power to coerce me to do what they want to do, or they send me to prison. And that's basically what we have here. We've got a private institution, a cartel, banking cartel, that went into partnership with the government. They took their cartel agreement, which was how they were going to regulate their own industry to their advantage. They took it to Congress, and they got those guys in Washington, D.C. to pass it into law. Now, can you think of more of a coup than that? They took a cartel agreement. Now it's law, so we have to obey it. And I think that has been in effect now for 100 years, and it's just amazing to me that the nation has survived. Well, of course, now we look back on that and we say, well, it has survived. We're still here. But as Scotty would say on Star Trek, he would say, Captain, I don't think we can hold her together much longer. She's coming apart. You know?
Exactly.
The nation is coming apart, and we can see that. And so it's not a very pleasant picture. It's not a pretty picture at all. But the enlightening thing, or the encouraging thing, I should say, is that people are becoming aware of it now. They're waking up. When I wrote my book, it was back in 1994, nobody knew anything about the Federal Reserve, couldn't care less. Now it's almost a household word. It's in everybody's vocabulary. Maybe not quite so sure what it is, but they know it's big and they know it's bad. They know it's doing bad things. And that's a huge first step toward bringing about reform.
Well said. And your book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, is available at InfoWarsStore.com to support both of our media organizations and what we're doing. It is so essential for listeners to continue to support the liberty movement, because we couldn't be doing any of this, without the general public support and help. And we've come so far. We've shot down the expansion of the Syria war. We have successfully together exposed the private Federal Reserve. We've beaten their latest gun grabs. Obamacare is incredibly unpopular, which is another private tax of these very same banksters. But more and more, they're just relying on oppressive control. But if the world, not just America, tyranny versus liberty, humanity and the individual versus the collective, establishment, if it was a football game, what's the score right now? Because I feel like we've been down in the game, but we've been rallying, scoring touchdowns, and we're coming up to a tie very soon if we just keep our spirit up and go 110%.
Well, I like that analogy. I don't know that we're coming that close to a tie, that close to it, but we are moving in that direction. That's the important thing. You know, up until a few years ago, I was very depressed about all of this because I thought that, America just didn't care. Well, the truth of the matter is most Americans do care, but they don't understand it enough, and they don't have enough background to know what to do about it. And it's always been that way. It's probably going to always be that kind of a situation where a very small group of people really will always run the show. And we can complain about that, and you can say, well, the elites, we don't like these elites, but the question is, who are the elites going to be? When our nation was founded, thank God, it was a very special elite that stepped up to the plate and created this magnificent Constitution that we had. Let's face it, it was created by an elite. The average American at that time didn't have the education, didn't have the knowledge, didn't have the foresight, the philosophical background to create a Constitution like that. So the question is not whether or not the masses are really capable of taking control of their own political destiny. The question is which small group is going to become the leadership group in our society. And this is where I'm encouraged, because I see that little thin margin of the population, which in my view is always less than 3% that runs the show. It's changing. It's changing from the collectivist, the CFR cluster, that center of gravity. And now people like you and myself and others who are in the forefront of calling for freedom and understand what that means, understand what it means to create freedom and what you have to avoid and all that stuff. They have a philosophical base for it, in other words. That group is gradually inching its way. It's like the camel getting its nose under the tent. It's happening, and that's very encouraging to me.
Well, you're right. And again, it's always a tiny minority, for good or bad, that governs and trailblazes. And the establishment knows that. That's why they run collectivist and fascist and control freaks and criminals for office and get them into the police and get them in as mayor because they crave it. Those of us that crave liberty and crave the animating contest of freedom and who crave truly being free and not dominated, it's our fault that we've ever let these lesser scum run things. Because if you really look at the government types and even the corporate centralized types, they're not that smart. They just have an instinct and a will to power. We have to have a will to take control of the power structure to empower humanity and to turn humanity loose, like Bruce Fine, who I had on earlier, who at the FCC pointed out, hey, this rule is dictatorial, saying no free speech. Let's just remove it. We never had the authority to begin with, and then we had talk radio out of one guy, because I've studied it, who made a noise at the right time in the mid-'80s. And again, this is an example of how the elite are scared of protest and action and free speech and libertarians because they know they're a tiny group that took over. They're scared of us. They call us counter-revolutionaries because we want to restore the republic. They're trying to restore kleptocratic gang government.
Yeah, well, you're quite right. And so I think that the collectivist mentality is that you're certainly right, no smarter than anybody else, and in some cases I think they come up short on that side, but they're certainly not stupid, and they understand human psychology, and I think they understand a bit of history that most of us in the past missed, and that is, and you mentioned it, is that there are power centers in society, and whoever controls those power centers controls the whole mass of society. It's not done through one person or one committee that dominates the whole nation. People belong to groups and organizations. They belong to political parties, labor unions. They belong to church organizations, PTAs, and all this sort of thing. They follow leaders, in other words. And if it's possible, and our opponents understood this, it is possible to capture control of the tops of these power centers, these organizations, with a relatively small number of people, if they know what they're doing and are willing to go out and reach for that power. Well, they've been more than willing to reach for that power because it fits their mentality. They're control freaks. They know that power is necessary to control. Those of us who don't want to be controlled have always said, I don't want to get involved in politics. Politics is dirty. I don't like politicians. And we back away from the battlefield. We've never been out there to confront these people. They've had an easy time of it because of our instincts to stay away from power. Well, all of that has got to change, and it is changing. And thanks a lot to you, Alex.
No, my friend, it's thanks to all our listeners and you and so many others. We're in this together. I do have really a lust for liberty. That's not the right word, but a real drive to be free. And we like free association. We want to hang out with our friends. We like people that are successful and artists and who've built their own thing. We know how to build our own system. We are self-sufficient. And so we don't want to be part of the gang. We don't want to go be part of the street gang or the motorcycle gang or the government gang. And so I really think it is gang mentality people versus individuals. So how do lone wolves, how do we then collectively come together to counter a collective?
Well, we have to recognize exactly this issue. We have to know the difference between collective action and collectivism. People get that confused. They think that because you don't want to be part of collectivism, you know that's bad. That's the basis of most of the evils in governments around the world today. They think that therefore you can't cooperate with anybody voluntarily. And I've always answered that by saying just because I'm an individualist doesn't mean I have to move my piano all alone. There's a difference between collectivism and collective action is this. Collective action is done voluntarily. Collectivism is collective action done under the whip. You do it, or you go to prison, or you die. And there's a difference. It's the difference between freedom of choice, the difference between freedom and slavery. Collectivists take advantage of that confusion. They think, well, you can't get this done. See, they love that confusion.
Well, and that's why I brought it up, because you can say it so much more eloquently than I can. That's it. Individuals think we've got to be totally alone. No, it's the opposite. We have to get past that instinct to not want to mess with other people and tell other folks that we're right and they're wrong. We've got to do it, or the pea-brains that lust after power are going to dominate us. And so we've got to go out and find other individuals, and through free association, resist them at every front. And a lot of that is just shopping with Made in America or local or groups that promote liberty or using the boycott power, which we're doing more and more. That's why the collectivists are always trying to organize their people into the same thing, when the truth is they're a minority when it comes to actual thinkers. Most of their minions, the camp followers, do it because of a perception of power being part of the group or because of some of the largesse they get.
Yes, and then there's a herd instinct, you know. And again, our opponents are very wise. They've studied this psychological element of mankind, and they know how to use herd instinct. And we have to learn how to use that, too. It doesn't mean we have to use it against people or deceive them, but we have to recognize that it's real. People do like to follow leaders, and so we're not going to change that. Even leaders like to follow leaders. I've observed this. You go to a cocktail party, and it doesn't take long before you realize that there's one person generally dominating the room in a cocktail party, and if another one shows up, and he's a dominant person, or she, all of a sudden you got a little contest there between these two dominant ones. And then usually one will back down and yield to the other one. You see it in all segments of the animal kingdom. I remember when I was a kid, I was a city kid, and I fortunately had a couple of summers on my uncle's farm, and one of my chores, so-called, was to go to bring the cattle in, you know. And I noticed at this young age that these cattle always followed the same lead cow. It was always the same lead cow. And one day, the lead cow was kept in the barn for a couple of days because it had an ulcer on the ear, and the veterinarian came out, and he wanted to isolate the cow and all that sort of thing. So the first day, that particular day, the lead cow wasn't in the field, and the other cows were very, very bewildered for a minute, but it didn't take long. Another Bessie moved to the front, and she became the lead cow for the next 2 or 3 days. She was the same lead cow, and then when the other one came back, well, that took over again. And I never really fully understood that lesson until I was much older, and I realized, well, humans are a lot like that too. And so you can fight it, you can bemoan it, but that's the way it is. So it's our responsibility to provide responsible, intelligent leadership for those who want to follow. It's our obligation, really, to provide that kind of leadership, because if we don't, our enemies will, and they're going to lead us right into the prison camp.
I agree. And again, I don't like going to cocktail parties for that reason, big ones, because it's all a big show-off fest. I like to hang around with my buddies, and then I shut up and hear them all tell jokes, and then it comes around to me and I make a joke, and that's what I like. I can't. That's the problem is I want to be alone or hanging out with my wife and kids or with a few buddies fishing or a few buddies, over dinner, and I just don't understand it. But you're absolutely right, and that's why the system, when we stand up as individuals, is we don't want to be slaves and say, hey, I'm not your slave, leave me alone. They're like, how dare you, you're bad, to try to beat you over the head, so all the other followers see that and think, I better not be like that. I better not have free speech like Phil Robinson. I better shut up, because they are trying to take out any lead cow that tries to get off the reservation. What do you make of the state of the open tyranny of Obama? I mean, worse than I thought it would even be, and the open attacks on free speech. I mean, what do you think's really behind that right now, G. Edward Griffin?
Boy, that's a question I'm almost afraid to even think about, and I have avoided it as much as possible, because every time I turn my mind to the question of motives, which is always a dangerous and a hard thing to guess what another person's motives are, I always come up with the bad answer. I keep coming up with a very strong suspicion, at least, that maybe Obama's mission was to lead the country down. I can't imagine that just an ideologue, somebody who really believed in collectivism, somebody who had been indoctrinated into communism and surrounded by a bunch of comrades and so forth, and who really believed that from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. In other words, an idealist. It's hard for me to accept that an idealist, once they're put into the seat of power like Obama is, and they could really see up close and personal that these policies are not working at all. In fact, they're accomplishing just the opposite. It's hard for me to imagine that they don't just say, hey, I give up, I was wrong. But no, it just keeps going forward and forward and forward. And I have a suspicion that some of the quotations we've heard from Obama in his early days before he even went into politics, that about his animosity toward America, his desire to punish and discipline America, I think I keep thinking, is that really his motive, his purpose, and his mission? And I suspect that it is.
I agree with you, and the folks that run him are like that. It was like the famous actor Ron Silver reportedly in front of newspaper reporters when Clinton was being sworn in back in 1993, and they had jets flying over, and the average rich Hollywood person didn't get they were part of the elite, didn't get that military work for them, and looked at Hillary and said, how dare them fly jets over to threaten us, because they knew the average military person wasn't an elitist, decadent scumbag. And Hillary looked at him and said, Ron, those are our jets now. And the thing is that their instinct to run us into the ground and really just do evil things and dominate us. They're threatened by the idea that we could bring them to justice. We could kick the Federal Reserve out. But if they could just break the country like Cloward and Piven, if they could just bankrupt us, then the whole country could become a giant re-education camp, and then they could build their utopia. And I think you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. And we have to go back to the philosophy of the Fabian socialists. Their idea, and they're still very real, by the way, and very dominant, and not just in the UK. But the Fabian socialist concept was that you had to smash the earth to bits so that you could remold it, rebuild it to your desire. They took that famous line out of Omar Khayyam, that if we could smash the earth to bit and then remold it closest to the heart's desire, that was that famous line. And they even had a mural to that effect, a little stained glass mural in their Fabian socialist house there in England, showing the early members of the Fabian Society with hammers, and they're striking the earth, which is on an anvil, and they're smashing the earth to bits to illustrate this idea that if you want to build something new, you have to break the old first. Lenin said it this way. Lenin said, if you want to create an omelet, you have to crack a few eggs, this sort of thing. It's the mentality of all collectivists.
Absolutely, and it's really about them playing God. But we see wherever they get control, they don't build something back beautiful afterwards. They just wreck everything, and then they rule from some smoldering North Korean command center. In closing, what do you want to say about the 100 years of the Federal Reserve and the income tax that came with it, and where do you think it's going?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is we're not going to let it happen for another 100 years, but then it couldn't possibly, because these forces cannot continue that much longer. We're coming to a head. It's not 100 years from now. It's either going to be a lot better or a lot worse. And I think because of what we are doing, it's going to be a lot better. When people become finally aware, not only that things are bad, but why they're bad. And it's not just the people. It's not just people with names, although that's a part of it. You can't ignore it. It's what they believe. It's what they hold in their minds. It's their philosophy, their ideology. Because if we just think it's people, if we just think it's Republicans or Democrats, or if we just think it's Obama or Clinton or some Republican, name anybody. If we think it's that person, then we replace them with somebody just like it, and we haven't gone anywhere. And so we have to realize it's what they believe. And the enemy, really, of freedom around the world is called collectivism. And that's our enemy. And you and I are part of the same crusade to destroy collectivism and replace it with individualism and freedom.
RealityZone.com, G. Edward Griffin, creature from the Jekyll Island, author, available at InfoWarsStore.com. All I know is we stood on the right side of history, and it's been great knowing people like you who have liberty burning in their hearts and minds, and it's our job, as Thomas Jefferson said, to light fires in the minds of men and women everywhere. Have a great New Year, G. Edward. We'll talk to you soon.
Right, bye.
All right, we'll be back with your phone calls, the news, and more on this special transmission. Back for the better, at least by the time I talked to my dad this morning, who's there. It's my mother's brother. And the only reason I talk about it is you realize what's really important at Christmas, especially when you've had family die, as his son did, and then he took care of him and got whatever this mystery illness is from him. So please pray for my uncle, who goes by Biff Hammond, but his name's William Forrest Hammond. Not the William Hammond that was a fake pilot or something. I was Googling that the other night and saw some other William Hammond. So it's not that William Hammond. But certainly pray for him. All that comes up from my uncle's an LSU was it football player and track team, and that is the right William Hammond back, I think, in like 1964, before he went to Vietnam. But I'm going to go see him. And in fact, I meant to call my dad during that break. Then I got sidetracked because he didn't want to talk in front of my aunt this morning. Tell you, my life is so busy, I end up like trying to multitask while I'm on air and doing this at the same time, so I apologize for bringing that up. But the reason I brought it up is please continue to pray for everyone that's sick across the world. I think about how 15 million people, children, starve to death each year, another 20 million adults. That's the UN's own numbers. It's probably higher. And then I see the leftist organizations say, good, there's too many people. But if it was their family dying, it'd be the end of the world. It's just, I have empathy for small animals, for everybody. And it's not because I'm some wonderful person. I've got normal, hardwired empathy, so I'm not a monster. And I just have come to realize the people running things, they don't have any empathy except for themselves, and I'm just sick of them. President has enrolled in Obamacare. They call it symbolic. That just came out from the Washington Post. Obama signs up for health care, selects bronze plan in D.C. exchange. What a sick joke. And then buried in the article, it was symbolic. He has total presidential care by the military. And, I mean, this is just total crap. If you scroll down, you can see him in the big armored, the big armored SUV. I mean, is there no end? You scroll down in that article, folks can see it. Oh, fantastic. The point is, people can go see the article. But that computer's locked up, I'm told. But the point is that it is pretty darn disgusting. But Drudge calls it a holiday special, one extra day to sign up. And then after we take your calls, I'm going to get into the articles that are up on Infowars.com. Obama family Christmas card, no mention of Christ or Christmas. Well, of course, cop tells college grad, you're lucky I didn't effing shoot you after raiding wrong house. Yeah, you don't get an apology now. You get handcuffs in the lawn being told, well, lucky we don't, because they're real soldiers, folks, when they do that. These are real tough guys. Lesbian author accuses gay groups of bullying tactics over Phil Robertson controversy. One day, president signs up after Obamacare. Record numbers reject health care law. Obama administration offers flimsy excuse for NSA surveillance. Americans brawl over new Air Jordan sneakers. That's an amazing video up on Infowars.com. And Ron Paul says progress towards peace in 2013, but dark clouds remain. There's also a lot more up on the site as well. They've also got some of the White House UN minions saying, no Benghazi regrets. I don't have time to think about a false controversy. They ordered the stand down for almost 8 hours. And she says, Susan Rice on Intel officials lying. They inadvertently made false representations. And she says it's a non-controversy. I mean, these people are just so mega arrogant, flaunting all their criminal activity right in our face. There's another story up on Drudge Report. New armored tank for police sparks fears from BizPack Review. That's an excellent site. We posted their article to mirror it for posterity. And it's just police departments everywhere. People are freaking out over police wearing camo like they're in Southeast Asia. And the giant armored vehicles used in Iraq, and Homeland Security is, we told you they were building a bunch for them. They claim it's surplus. Yeah. This is a giant buildup against the American people, folks, and they train to take us on. Okay, let's go to the phone calls. Brandon, thanks for holding from Utah. Merry Christmas to you, my friend.
You too. Thanks, Alex. First-time caller, long-time listener. I was just calling. I had a question, but first, I think it's disgusting. I'm a little fired up. My family's sick here, and I'm praying for yours, but I'm a little fired up. The elite getting us sick, and me, for one, I'm not going to take it. And if they try, take our firearms, my family's, they're going to have a fight. I hope it's peaceful, but I'm just fired up. I'm sick of it, and I hope we can take the United States back. But my question was, have you heard of this Google Internet that they're putting in people's houses? They put it, my HOA pays for it. They're putting it in my house, but the router is nothing I've ever seen before in my life. It looks like, and it has something attached to it that runs down my wall. And I was just wondering if you've ever heard of that.
Well, sir, I want to be clear that everywhere they make you pay. Dr. Stallman breaks this down, expert on IT. This is the plan. They make you pay for a black box in your car that's going to tax you by the mile. I was a conspiracy theorist saying that. It was designed for that. The insurance consortiums globally promoted it. Now they're moving ahead with it in Europe and here in the U.S. It's the same thing with your cable boxes with microphones and cameras in them over a decade ago. Now that's all admitted. Record sales for pouches that they're lead lined so that, and I've tested them, I've got one, so that your phone, in fact, we're going to come out with our own privately branded high quality one, because we're going to fund our operation while having quality products that fight tyranny, so that your phone only connects and gives them data when you want it to. But yes, everything, smart meters, all the new appliances, everything has tech built into it, and the real system with, say, Xbox is selling that data to the government. The Xbox can see through your wall with basically like sonar/radio waves, can see through your clothes, can look through up to 8 walls with crystal clear scans. More human than human, more definition than the eyeball. And I told everybody that 5 years ago, because they were bragging about it in Homeland Security applications. And they go, oh, that's not true. A government wouldn't do that. There's no NSA. It's not watching you. It's not, when it's all there. I mean, laptops in California and Missouri and Pennsylvania, the schools watching kids naked at home, telling them, taking snapshots, taking video for the pervs, and they don't even get in trouble. Government is in a mass criminal riot against our due process, a criminal riot empowered by foreign corporations to totally usurp us. So God bless you. I appreciate your call. Anything else? He's gone. By the way, Adon Salazar's in here. I don't care if you do it or if Kit Daniels does it, but it's very newsworthy. They now have Walmart Obamacare kiosk. And I've not seen that in the news. Guys, will you search that and see if that's in the news and give me any data on that? I want to see if Jakari will come in here at the next 5-minute segment or 6-minute segment. I want to get him in here to give me a report on this before we air it. A quick breakdown of what we're about to see. We're going to premiere it here on the radio. And then I want him to work with you just on a blurb for the site so we can put this, skip the nightly news. It was going to be on the nightly news. I want to put it out now. This report he just finished. And then I want to just go ahead and go right to YouTube, the Alex Jones channel with this so that everybody can see it. How's that sound? All right, great. And again, we'll get Jakari over here to come in studio because that's big. They put in at 700 plus Walmarts the telescreens that said, look, don't trust anyone in Walmart but the state. Terrorists are everywhere. I mean, that's directly out of Running Man. This is directly out of North Korea. If they had money, they'd do that. I mean, this is insane. Now they're coming out with license plates in California that have like government announcements on them that are digital, where it's not always your plate number. It's a digital signal with a transponder. And it's just like government ads and messages taking over our phones, taking over radio, with Obama messages, our digital license plates and making you pay for them. I mean, there's no end to what these dirtbags do. The sky's the limit. They have unlimited resources off the Industrial Revolution to literally build a hell pit. And people are like, oh, yeah, right, digital license plates. By the way, the government employees aren't going to have those, though. They're going to have the regular ones, and they're exempt from all the scanners. I mean, it's just total discrimination. Let's go to Iona in South Carolina. Thank you for holding. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I want you to know that you're the only one I listen to now. I used to listen to the others, but you're a straight shooter. You just don't fool around. So thanks for being that.
Well, thank you. Listen, I'm too tired to think about what I'm going to say. I just say what I believe, what I know.
I know, and that's great. I got to tell you, before I talk about Farrakhan and the Duck Dynasty guy, In 1975, I was in school in Kansas, and somebody handed me this, they called it a facsimile back then. I think it was a Moody newsletter, and it talked about the Beast. And the Beast was a 3-story computer in Belgium, and they said that it was built or being built to hold an identification for every person in the world. And that was back then. And I thought, well, that can't be because, third world countries, they're not going to have, that can't be true. And then they said they were going to start with the barcodes like they use now, and they were going to see if it worked starting in, I think, Montana. And then later on, they were going to give people tattoos and scan their tattoo when they went through the grocery line. So I thought, well, I don't doubt it's going to happen someday. But back then, I thought, not in my lifetime. And then Obama was elected. And when he was elected, it was like this really thick oppression I felt. And I thought, oh, my God, it's going to happen in my lifetime. So I understand what you were saying earlier today. I just wanted to say that first.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am. I really appreciate you breaking all that down and going over it here on air. And it's just sad to be in the clutches of evil, but it's what happens. God believes in universal law, and the universe, if you don't believe in God, you reap what you sow. What comes around goes around. And for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. We're not going to abort 53 million babies here and say they're not humans and didn't have rights, and not have it where old people then don't have rights, or young kids don't have rights, or property owners don't have rights. I mean, you let weak people get walked on, unborn, minorities, you name it, throughout history. What is done to the weak is going to be done to the strong later. And if you don't have empathy, if we don't have empathy for an unborn child or for a chicken in a factory farm, we're going to end up having deadly plagues produced in those unnatural factory farms. And it's going to kill us, probably by the hundreds of millions. And it's the same deal with abortion. I mean, it's just like whatever you allow to happen to other creatures is going to happen to you or your kids. And that's what you call God-fearing. Even if you don't believe in God, say the universal causality, the universal laws of nature, that when I even think about doing bad things to people, not just my own instincts and my own empathy, but I just feel, oh, that's scary. Ooh, I don't want to do bad things to people because I wouldn't want that done to me. And that's my connection to everybody else feeling their pain. And these psychopaths, they don't feel people's pain. Oh, they'll tell you they feel your pain, but they don't really feel your pain. God bless you. I appreciate your call. Great points. And Jakari Jackson's going to be coming in at the next segment to introduce his piece here on air. Okay, let's go ahead and talk to Jim in Texas. Jim, you're on the air. Go ahead.
How are you, Alex?
I'm good.
Yeah, I just wanted to call in today because on December 19th, they ended up, our good old Congress ended up passing the NDAA, which I don't hear any of the mainstream media talking about. Indefinite, detention of American citizens without trial. Might as well be in North Korea at this point. So I am a member of law enforcement. I really don't want to get into what type of law enforcement I'm in at this point, but I just want you to know that there are a lot of people out here that do understand what's going on. And we have a constitution. We took an oath for a reason. And no matter what happens, I think people are going to take as much as they're going to take until things finally break down to the point where people have to act. But there are a lot of people out here that are understanding what's going on. And we are in positions where when the right time comes along, the actions have to be taken. And I just hope that there are others out there in law enforcement and the military that think about the oath that they took, the promise that we made, because it does mean something.
It certainly does, and God bless you. And, that's the sad thing. I know most of the military I talk to are awake more than the public. Police, on average, are more awake than the general public. But then we also see a lot of the really bad examples out of the police because it's the federalization and the globalization. But there is a backlash by police all over the country saying they're not going to enforce unconstitutional gun laws. People could say, well, you can't pick and choose laws. Well, if a law is unconstitutional and obviously abhorrent, it's not a right, it's a duty to say no to it. So what percentage of the people you talk to on average, just a kind of quick idea, what percentage of the folks you're talking to are starting to wake up that things are not going well? Oh, he hung up. He wanted to make his statement and go. All right, well, I hear you. Good points that you made there. Alan and others, we're going to go to you after the break, after we talk to Sha'Carri, do a little bit of overdrive, but you've been holding so long, I'll go to you, and then Chris and Ed and Jerry. I'll try to get to all those. But Sha'Carri Jackson's going to pop in with a Walmart connection to Walmart and Obamacare. And I did a search on this and can find nothing on it except for an article that's Walmart installs Obamacare RFID chip scanning health machines. That's pretty crazy, but that's not the angle that Sha'Carri's going with. So we've done a search and can find nothing about Walmart Obamacare kiosks. But we have a reporter, I believe, is breaking news then on the other side of this quick break. Please don't forget the news websites, Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com. You can follow us on Twitter at RealAlexJones, and we have InfoWarsLife.com with simply amazing health supplements. If you want to be able to go look at it and see the video for yourself, creepy Obamacare pod found in Walmart. And that is from Kiosk Marketplace with a Walmart press release when this first broke yesterday. And now we've got a video for you, briefly introducing it, Sha'Carri Jackson.
Report about the kiosk at Walmart. I went to go check it out myself because I heard they had RFIDs in the original report. So I went to check it out. I didn't find any RFIDs, but I did find some other very interesting aspects about these Obamacare pods. I think they're saying it can read RFID. And a lot of the new credit cards have those. Yes, I couldn't confirm that because I didn't have anything to scan with under the scanner, but it did have some type of scanner. Amazing. Here's Sha'Carri Jackson's report. To Walmart, but when I do, it's to get a story. So I got a tip that at Walmart they have RFID scanning Obamacare kiosk. So I'm going to go inside this Walmart in Butte, Texas to find out if that is the case and also see what the process is to actually sign up for Obamacare.
The Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, was passed in 2010. And the law makes health insurance available to more people with the hope that they will be able to get the care they need.
Please place your left arm into the blood pressure cuff. The blood pressure test is starting. The blood pressure cuff will tighten around your arm. Please answer the question. We will now begin your weight and body mass evaluation. Please place your feet on the footrest as shown in this video.
So I just finished my healthcare assessment at the Obamacare kiosk. To be very clear, I did not sign up for Obamacare. I went to test out the kiosk. I did use my height and weight and so forth to get the health assessment, but I did not sign up for Obamacare, and I'm not suggesting that you do either. First of all, that thing does have some type of scanner, but I cannot confirm that it's for RFIDs. As far as my healthcare assessment itself, the kiosk, in all of its infinite wisdom, told me that even though I'm age 27 and I jog 3 miles a day before I go into work, that I am overweight, possibly even obese, also that I'm at high risk for hypertension. Now, I'll talk about the overweight aspect for a moment, and it also had other options. You could check your eyes and other things as well. I didn't want to give the NSA
By the way,
my
Sha'Carri could be like a fitness model.
So I opted out of that one.
No, we know
when you go to these machines, or I guess any doctor now, they do these type of body mass index, the BMI, and I knew this was bull since I was in high school, because back in high school they were trying to tell me that I was obese pretty much on paper because I weighed more than I was supposed to, even though me and a lot of the other guys who played sports and so on, we worked out twice a day. We're 20 pounds overweight because we walk around with so much muscle. We look like the guys from Gears of War. And so keep that in mind when you go to these machines, that it's going to tell you you're fat or you're whatever, and you may have some weight issues or whatnot, but take that with a grain of salt and think about, this stuff is pretty much a one-size-fits-all policy, that if you're a certain age, a certain height, you need to be X weight. It doesn't take into account muscle mass or things such as that. So if you're interested in finding one of these Obamacare machines, maybe even shooting your own video, you can go to solohealth.com or .gov or whatever it is, shoot your own video, link it in the comments below, and we'll take a look at it. And once again, I'm not telling you to sign up for Obamacare. I'm just saying if you guys are interested in a joke and a laugh, you can go check out these machines. You can find more reports at Infowars.com.
All right, great job, Jakari. We're almost out of time. We're going to do some overdrive here, but this is incredible. And the reason this is incredible is the big angle. I want the full report. I want everybody to go over there, I guess after Christmas or even today. That's a robot. This is the new healthcare, is a robot assessing everybody and then giving you a bunch of pure...
Like Elysium. Like Elysium, you're sick, here are your pills.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even... Yeah. That's it, Walmart installs Elysium Healthcare. Yeah. Oh my gosh, we're coming back into overdrive. We'll just do 20 minutes, Jakari. This is too big. I got to go see my uncle, actually. You know what? You guys got to have extended coverage tonight. That's what's happening. Infowars.com. By the way, I just told Jakari, and he's game to do it. We're going to go back out and officially ask questions of Walmart and show all this. It's a robot sitting there assessing you at Walmart. I mean, that's directly out of a science fiction movie. To give you your cruddy eugenics care. And to capture all the poor Walmart people and their IDs to then grab their bank accounts later when they unsuccessfully sign up. I mean, would you like a suicide pill? Let's go ahead and talk to, we're going to go to Jack in California, listening on 1340 a minute. But first, Chris in California, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex. I'm going to cut to the chase. I'm kind of concerned about this Chinese situation. Let me tell you, China has built up their modern military with the help of the assistance of the U.S. and in a short time that defies all logic. You know, we've given them all the technology to move missiles into the playgrounds of our children. We've given them fighter technology, targeting technology. They've laundered it through given it to different countries, and then they send it to China. In the same time span, we've whittled down our military to a shell of itself. They talked about replacing like the F-15, the F-16 fighters with expensive fighters like the F-22 and the F-35 that they haven't even filled the ranks with them. So we basically have, what people don't understand this, is our military is nothing what they think it is. You know, we look big beating up on people that are carrying an AK-47 and we're going at them with drones. But the weapons that we've been developing are for urban control. They aren't for fighting a strategic war.
No, we've been developing on record a UN global domestic suppression army for the global government to suppress domestic uprisings and mount type environments. It's not to fight a superpower. We have been sold out. That's what all the top retired generals say. I'm telling you, that's the treason, folks. This is not a game.
And what I'm saying is that's what I mean by what ultimately I think their contingency plan is they're going to foment a phony war with China. It's all planned. And then it's going to get to the point where we're going to say we just can't take them on because we aren't going to have any of our allies backing us up. The world hates us. And then they're going to capitulate. And then China's going to come in and occupy us, and that's going to solve all these problems. And all
that is admittedly, with Henry Kissinger, one of the plans on the drawing board, and the communists have been offered that. And you're absolutely right. They're building the superhighways down to Baja and out to Southern California, southern Mexico, on record to bring in the foreign army and split the country in two. Oh, man, I tell you, that's in the NLE-09 FEMA documents that are public. I just can't believe how screwed this country is. If the average cop strutting around in camo, bugging their eyes out at the public who's bought into all this, has no idea how they've been sold out too. But it's a science fiction movie. I don't blame people not believing it. I mean, it's God bless you. Let's go ahead and talk to Jack, listening on 1340. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that you have a worldwide platform for reaching people as a out-of-the-box Christian. You're going to have eternal fruit and reward and blessings on many souls will be reached through your bold stance as a Christian. I just want to encourage you that keep it up. I love your passion, and I love it's kind of the spirit of John the Baptist, fighting tyranny and speaking out against the evil, and you got the right understanding of Romans 13.
Well, God bless you, sir. I'm trying to be the best I can, but it's not about me, and I appreciate your call, and God bless you. Have a great Christmas. But I do not like evil, and I do not like enslavement, and I do not like the spirit of this world. I'll tell you that right now, and I am eternally set against it. And I just feel like dirty rags in the presence of my Creator and my Savior. I can feel God's presence, and that's why anybody who has the spiritual discernment feels like a dirty rag, because you're in the presence of such goodness. But then you look at the evil, and it's just like, oh my gosh, how can they be doing this? Because all the sins they tell us about, the little ones, I'm not saying they're good, but that's to make us feel guilty and bad so the evil can just take over.